You know what? When you plant something and it starts growing and it gets bigger and it gets older, and then it gets so old sometimes it can't fulfill its purpose anymore. See, that's the case. There's a cycle of life to the plants and to the animals and etc., right? So I've successfully segued into asking you if you have the information that I've been told has become available of a comparison of the average age of the AEW and WWE wrestlers on their roster to see who's the youth revolution and who's the old timers in this business these days.
Well, we do have something here. This was something posted this past week by WrestleNomics. They're on Patreon. The median age wrestler for TV and pay-per-view events for both AEW and WWE. Since 2000, according to, they pulled the data from Cage Match.
And now, is Cage Match an unimpeachable source like Facebook and Wikipedia?
I think for data that isn't data that isn't opinion driven, that is not, it's not driven by opinion. It may be a fine source. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it's fine. It's fine.
What was your other question? Well, how do you want me to explain this to you?
So this comparison is over time. Where did they start out 5 years ago or whatever it was? What was the average age of the AEW wrestler and what was the average age of the WWE wrestler?
Okay, now this is AEW in 2019. And this counts pay-per-views, Dynamites, and later Collision and Rampage. In 2019, the average age was 31.7 years.
And where was WWE at in that period of time?
And that period of time, WWE was 33.8 years, and NXT, for the record, was 30.4 years.
So, at that time, and I would have thought that AEW would have even skewed a little bit younger because of all the not ready for primetime players they started signing there. But then, of course, Jericho's on the roster, so that's got to lift the whole fucking thing up, 10 percentage years? Him being AARP and all. But okay, so 31 to 33, 2 years to the younger for AEW in 2019.
In 2020, AEW's average wrestler age was 32.2 years, with WWE at 35.3 years, and NXT at 31.7.
Well, see, now, the only thing that makes sense is NXT. Because in 1 year, the average age in AEW only went up a half a year, but the average age in the WWE went up fucking 2 years. So that must mean that working for the WWE in the last couple of years of the Vince McMahon administration aged you more quickly than normal.
Well, we go to 2021. I guess we should say 2020 was during the pandemic. But 2021, AEW, the average age of the wrestler was 34.6, which is a pretty big jump on here. WWE's average age was 35.8. NXT 31.2.
So now WWE only increased a half a year. NXT went down, and AEW jumped 2.4 years. So now we're almost the WWE, and I know NXT, but for intents and purposes, for what I'm going for, we're about to meet in the middle. The WWE and AEW, they're about to meet in the middle here if we keep going at this pace.
All right, well, the pace brings us to 2022. AEW's average wrestler age was 33 years old. WWE's 35.1 year, or 1 years, 35 years and 1 month. NXT, 28.5.
Oh!
And remember, I got to remember the timeline, but a lot of NXT's top guys left. Adam Cole, Keith Lee, various people who were on top there all of a sudden ended up on AEW TV.
Well, and that's why the age may be increasing over in AEW, but now they've stopped that. They backed up 1.6 years, while WWE backed up 7. Would this be months? 7/10 of a year. I don't know what the fuck. The point is, WWE backed up, but NXT dropped almost 3 years.
We now go to 2023. AEW Dynamite, or AEW's overall wrestler age, the median, 35.4 years. WWE, 35.1.
Oh!
NXT, 28.3.
So now, the WWE held exactly steady. AEW increased 2.4 years, and AEW has now surpassed the WWE by 3/10 of a whatever the fuck, and NXT dropped another 2/10.
And finally, 2024, the year we are currently in, so this is not complete. AEW's average age, 35.7. WWE, 34.7. NXT, 28.4.
NXT is, for 3 years, been between 28.3 and 28.5, and now AEW has surpassed WWE by 1 year exactly, 35.7 to 34.7.
It's crazy when you look at WWE at the end of the Attitude Era, and just as the roster aged. 2000, average age 29.7. 2001, 29.7. 2002, 30.4. 2003, 31.5. So, it was literally that crew from the late 90s getting older.
But here's something that, again...
And look at how young they were on average.
Remember when I think it was the first year that AEW started up. When, again, the AEW fans, and there were more of them then, and more of them were on me before they found out that many of the things that we said were going to come true. But they were, you would only push old guys. And we went back and showed that when I was booking Smoky Mountain Wrestling, that the people that I booked in my main event spots were actually younger than Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and one or two other of their, top guys at that particular point in time. And that pretty much if you looked at my whole roster at the time, if you took Bob Armstrong out of the equation, because he was in his 50s at that point, that across the board, it was as young or younger than AEW. Chris Candido in 1993 was 21, 22 years old. And so there's just these people that couldn't understand. Of course I booked these guys 30 years ago. You fucking morons, when they were 30 years younger. But they couldn't compute with them, but you get the fucking point.
Well, the other thing was people looked older. Everyone always flips out when they realize how old Dennis Condrey was in Mid-South or Jim Crockett Promotions, because he looked 10 years older.
He was 32. Dennis Condrey was younger when in Crockett Promotions in 1986. Dennis Condrey was younger now than the average age of the AEW wrestler. But they looked like they were full-grown adult fucking men. Which therein lies another one of the problems. But that's the point of the matter, is that AEW was the supposedly the youth movement here, but basically he's either signed the guys and kept them all this time, and they've aged 5 years, which is about what his fucking average is. And that's true. How many does he get rid of? Or when he does sign guys, it's been of late, or talent, I should say, guys and girls, people that have come from or already had a run in the WWE. And so they're going to be several years older. And meanwhile, the WWE is, not only trying to make and find new stars, but I would think that if you took Orton and a couple people out of this equation, the roster, the average would be younger than that. But obviously, nobody's advocating taking Orton off the roster. But I'm just saying a few of those guys can still go skew that even further. They've made new stars.
We also don't know if this is men and women, right?
Well, you just read it to me. Wrestlers. I'm trying not to be sexist, but I don't give a fuck, particularly if the women are included anyway, because it matters not in the overall point. But I'm trying not to be misogynistic.
All right, well, I mean, it's interesting.
Well,
it's interesting just because, the Nigel Danielson match kind of makes me think of it. For the fans of Ring of Honor who attended the shows or bought the DVDs at that point, that match was a big deal. But these guys and those fans are aging out. And like you said, WWE's already working on and creating the next generation. AEW gets their cast-offs. It doesn't know what to do with them. And then when they get young people, they either choose the wrong people to get behind, or they don't know what to do and how to bring someone. They can't make someone a star, and the people who look like they have star potential can get pushed in AEW, but like a Jade Cargill, once they get to WWE, it's like, holy shit, like this is a completely different thing. What I was doing there wasn't serious.
Well, but also, and I understand the point you're making, and I agree with it, but here's another problem. Let me add this on, because I remember a memo that Bill Watts sent out to all the guys in Mid-South that he had dictated to Jim Ross because it was JR's handwriting, and he just Xeroxed it as JR took it down. Gentlemen, I know all of you are superstars, and he would put in quotation marks, all of you are superstars, quotation marks, and all, quotation marks, of our fans know everything, in quotation marks, about you and your gimmick. But for the sake of it, let's explain it every time we need to. Every time you have a gimmick match, explain the rules in your interview. Talk about the rules. Well, how is this match won or lost? If it's a street fight, dress in street fight clothes. If it's tape fist match, tape your fucking fist up. Make it obvious for people to understand our program and what we are trying to sell them. That's paraphrasing all of that, but a lot of it's a quote. And it's the same thing Gary Hart used to say, repetition is the key when dealing with goofs. He was talking about trying to get little John Harris to remember the finish at Texas Stadium. But repetition is the key when you are selling something to the public, because in case we all haven't noticed, a lot of the fucking public ain't very fucking swift. And so you can't assume that everybody, when you're on national television, knows everything that happened in Ring of Honor in the Manhattan Center 20 years ago, or in Japan at the Yokohama Arena 15 years ago. Because they don't, not on national TV. If this was tape trading, if this was the segment of diehard fans that was watching Ring of Honor on HDNet when Cuban still owned it, or was trading for the Japanese tapes before New Japan World, or going to Ring of Honor at the Chicago Ridge Fieldhouse, or the big indie shows in New York, that would draw 1,200 people. They don't remember that shit on national television because most of them didn't fucking know it happened and never heard any of those people. And when you do angles based on the fond remembrance that Tony Khan and all of the other people who were doing the things I just mentioned, trading for these tapes and DVDs and fucking on the Ring of Honor mailing list in 2006 and whatever the fuck, it's great to book like this, but not for national TV. And there's what is it the kids say? There's levels to this. When I was on the creative team in the WWF, I had philosophies I would pitch. I had concepts I would pitch or help with stipulations or a finish or whatever, but I'm not suggesting that if I'd had sole control, I would have booked it like Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Because that wouldn't have worked for all the reasons we've talked about, that it's the same year ECW wouldn't have worked in Tennessee and they would have hooted at Smoky Mountain Wrestling in Philadelphia. And Ohio Valley Wrestling had a very different booking philosophy than all of them because it was an even smaller territory but meant to be a local proving ground facility. You book at levels to what your goddamn venue or your audience is. Are you doing a spot show at goddamn Rec Center in Elizabethtown, Kentucky? Or are you doing a main event fucking extravaganza at the Louisville Gardens that seats 6,000 people 45 miles up the road? You don't put Steve Austin in goddamn Elizabethtown. It's booking to your venue and to your potential audience on television. And talent that can get over on a regional basis because of who they are, what their gimmick is, whatever, may not fly on national TV. Just the same way as a goddamn guy who might be on top in Dallas, Texas, might not translate to New York or Charlotte. But when you're broadcasting a national television show, you attempt to acknowledge the histories of the veteran wrestlers you have and pump up their background without going into excruciating goddamn minor detail about the Elks Lodge. But you tell them your stories and sell your talent the way you want it sold, not the way other people have done it. And you explain to your audience who everybody is and why they're mad at each other and what they'd like to get out of this thing. And then you go from there. And just because you liked it when you were a teenager doesn't mean you need to put it on national TV 20 years later with the same people. That's a people say, I'm stuck in the past. I wanted to do, in OVW 20 years ago, I wanted to do wrestling philosophically like it was done in the 80s with guys that were born in the 80s. And they'd be 25 years old. Now they're doing wrestling from the 90s and 2000s with the same people that were doing it. Brian, are you still there?
Are you okay? Yes, I am.
Well, I mean, have I been going on too long?
Well, it's never too long, but you're making a point.
Did I get to it yet?
I haven't been able to determine.
That's the point I was trying to make, is that Tony is narrowcasting because he thinks that everybody knows. All the fans know, and they're in their bubble, where they're the guys that didn't want to dress like they were in the street fight, or didn't want to tape their fist, or didn't want to explain the match or their gimmick because they're so over that everybody knows. Well, I got news for a lot of you. Everybody don't know. A lot of people didn't know that fucking Chris Jericho was still in the wrestling business. Remember when he was on AEW television? So if you're trying to get any more than you've already got, then you need to fucking not narrowcast to the people that already fucking know. And if you always do what you always did, then you always get what you always got.
All right, that was SmackDown.
Was it?
Oh, no?
No, we didn't even get there yet.
Oh.
But let's go to AEW.